16. Reborn into spirituality. By mid-March, we could all feel that spring was in the air. Spending most of my time with Gwen at my apartment was now a routine. The same thing could be said for Michael and his girlfriend. Yes, things were really changing in my life in many different directions. For one thing, I started to take the spiritual side of my existence more seriously. Father Chuck was adamant in the claim that the good fortunes in my life were not mere coincidences. He thought they were signs of the divine trying to steer me into a life that had stronger convictions. Moral and spiritual convictions were neither part nor parcel of being a black athlete in an all-white college. Generally, black students in such circumstances tended to see themselves as fortunate, although not privileged. It is only the athletic ones among them who, because they attracted more adulation on account of their physical skills, tended to drift into that false cocoon of feeling privileged. After Dad's departure, I started to have more philosophic conversations with Father Chuck, as we called him. Father Chuck started to talk with me about faith and culture, and at one point he asked me if I was sure I didn't want to become a priest. I laughed and said I didn't even belong to your church. At that point, he insisted that I start attending his confirmation classes. I had started religious confirmation classes with Father Chuck more on his insistence than on my spiritual awakening. I was expecting to make my first communion at the Easter celebrations. We had made a deal that he would keep all of this a secret from Gwen until my actual confirmation, which was carded for the Easter Vigil. Easter was approaching and everyone connected was expected to have a memorable time. Gwen had invited her best friend from her undergraduate years at Miami University, Malaika, who was planning on entering a convent in the fall. This was to be her last outing in the secular world. Malaika had been a regular in the Peters household, and everyone was looking forward to seeing her again. I was looking forward to my first communion in the Episcopal Church. I wanted so much to surprise Gwen and her mother with my confirmation into their church, but more was to come. It was during one of our guy talks that Father Chuck asked me what were my plans after graduation. I casually said that Gwen and I would probably get married before both of us moved on to graduate school. It was likely to be in the Washington-Baltimore area. Gwen had applied to study pediatric audiology at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine at Baltimore, and I was planning on doing law at Georgetown University. We both had strong grades, so the prospect of us getting into these schools looked very good. Suddenly, Father Chuck got silent, and as serious as he had ever been with me, said, "Before you leave, I want you to do me a big favor." "Sure, man, what is it?" "Can you help me find a wife? You know, somebody like Gwen. I think you know the type of woman that would make a good companion to a priest like me." I was blown away by this request. How many times have you been asked by your parish priest to find him a wife? Think about it. You will understand what I meant. Father Chuck was under severe pressure from his senior vicar and also from the bishop, for good reasons. This man was handsome, well-built, and very amiable, and his superiors were just living in fear that he would become the victim of some scandal that the church would have great difficulty overcoming. I said, "Sure, I will. while hiding a complex of feelings of sorrow and fear. Poor guy seemed to be going about this the wrong way. Get a wife first and then get a mission. In discussing this odd request from our local parish priest with Gwen, I broached the possibility of suggesting Malika as a possible match. Gwen just laughed. She said I did not even know Malika, have never met her, and now I wanted to introduce her as a match for our priest. Eric, vocation is not the only thing that persons had to have in common to be a suitable couple. Never mind her. I pursued this matchmaking as my personal project. Meeting with Father Chuck on the tracks, I told him that I had a prospect. He was anxious. Was it anyone from the local community? I said no, and he seemed pleased. I did my best at describing her most adorable attributes, being careful to add that she was very much into the spiritual side of her existence. Oh, he liked that term. That sounds most exciting, Eric. Wait a minute. What I meant was right now she's pursuing acceptance into a convent to become a sister of the poor or something like that. Was his response, which came after a moment of hesitation. Reinforcing my point, I continued. But I believe that if you made the right move, you can succeed. And you are going to show me how to make the right move, right? Where did this guy get that oversized view about the romantic prowess of black men? Another one of those myths that most black students tended to attract, especially from young white college girls. He surely didn't get that from speaking with the black sisters. Well, she's coming to visit Gwen for Easter. She will be at the Easter Vigil. So I'm going to make sure that Gwen's mom invites you to their Easter lunch. And there you will have the opportunity. Sounds like a plan. I just knew that you would come through for me. Yeah, right. That was a murmur. The Easter Vigil was something else. First, Gwen was at home as Malika arrived by bus from Michigan on Good Friday. Mass was at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. Gwen made a fuss about I coming and picking them up so that we could sit together, against which I had to make some excuse to meet them at the church instead. She wasn't too comfortable with my excuse, although she accepted it. This was going to be Christmas midnight mass all over again, but with a surprising twist. At church that night, Gwen tried her best to save the seat next to her, but the pew began to fill up from the other side, and so eventually she had to squeeze herself into the end position. Now she was really furious, that is, quietly. Once again, not only was I late, but I would not be able to sit next to her. Malika kept asking for me, and so did her mom. The church went dark for the lighting of the Paschal candle. Her last text to me was, "Where the hell are you, Eric?" I am in the church, but it is so crowded that I had to take a seat right in front. But don't worry, you will see me when the lights come back on and they start reading the 7 lessons. She had no idea what I was speaking about. After the lights of the candles and the introductory hymn of praise, the first lesson was taken from Genesis. It was the creation story. Gwen did not recognize me at first, but she immediately recognized the voice and started to smile. Leaning over Malika, who was between her and her mom, she said, "Mom, that is Eric." "Where?" "Reading." "Oh my God, what's with the white cape?" "I don't know. You will have to ask Father Chuck." Malika chimed in. "This is your Eric reading the first lesson?" With a sense of pride, Gwen whispered, "Yes." "Ben, he is gorgeous. Where did you find this guy?" The service completed the Liturgy of the Saints, and then the priest informed the audience that there were 3 candidates for baptism before their confirmation. While he was saying that, the professional cross was passing up the aisle, followed by myself and 2 other candidates. That is when I saw her for the first time that evening. I gave her a nod of recognition as she just held her hand over her mouth in awe. The next time I saw her was when all of the confirmation candidates had to go around the church and light the candles of the congregation. This goodly lady, seeing me coming up the aisle towards her, blew out her candle and Malika's own so that they can light them again from mine. Malika was totally amused. At the end of the service, both the vicar and assistant vicar stood at the entrance door to greet parishioners as they left. Gwen came up and said, "Father, I would like you to meet my friend Malika." He was taken aback. He had not realized that the friend I was telling him about was of Asian descent. He was smitten by her beauty as she gently said, "Nice to meet you, Father." "Oh, happy Easter to you," he blurted out in an awkward tone. Next moment, I felt someone pulling at my arm. "Eric, your mother-in-law did not invite me to lunch." Holy shit, I thought, and ran to Gwen. "Please tell your mother to go and invite Father Chuck to lunch." Her mom quickly did the honors as he smiled, saying, "See you folks later." I had to pick up Father Chuck to bring him to lunch. That was how the introduction was intended to happen. Interestingly, Malika, expressing her joy at everything that went on, mentioned that she thought the young priest was cute. "Don't worry, you will be meeting him again this afternoon. I hope you still find him cute," Gwen retorted. Malika laughed. When I picked up Father Chuck, he was beaming with excitement. "Eric, she is fantastic. What a beauty. And she wants to go into the convent?" "Only you can say for her, Holy Father," I said with a pun intended. He smiled as we drove into Gwen's driveway. The lunch was an open affair, with many other parishioners in attendance. I think Father Chuck had a difficult time extricating himself from all the old women of the Mothers' Union to get Malika into a prolonged conversation. When they finally did, at a side table, he looked like he was doing all of the talking, while she just listened. I finally got to him to tell him that I was about to leave with him. Their goodbye was a hug, not a handshake. That to me looked like progress. My grandmother always said that if you remained a good person and prayed a lot, God would continuously reward you. He surely did so with granting me a father, a preacher, a best friend, a little brother, and a potential companion for life. It seemed like he was about to do the same for a good and praying priest.